Today the world says goodbye to a giant, George Foreman, a man whose life was as big as his fists and as warm as his smile. He passed away at 76, leaving behind a legacy that stretches from the boxing ring to the kitchen counter, from the church pew to the hearts of millions. George was a champion not just in sports but in life. His story is one of struggle, triumph, faith, and family. Let's take a journey through the incredible life of George Foreman, a man who never stopped fighting for what mattered. George Edward Foreman was born on January 10, 1949, in Marshall, Texas, a small town where dreams were hard to come by. He grew up in Houston's Fifth Ward, a rough neighborhood where survival often meant scrapping by. As a kid, George wasn't on the right path. He dropped out of school, ran with a tough crowd, and later said he was a bully who didn't know better. But at 16, everything changed. He joined the Job Corps, a program that gave him a chance to work, learn, and most importantly, box. Those gloves became his ticket out. Boxing turned George into a force. At 19, he went to the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. Standing 6 feet 3 inches tall with hands that hit like hammers, he dominated the heavyweight division. In the final, he knocked out his opponent in the second round, winning gold. As he stood on that podium, waving a small American flag, the world knew a star had arrived. George wasn't just strong, he was unstoppable. By 1973, George was the king of the heavyweight world. He faced Joe Frazier, a champ known for his toughness, in Kingston, Jamaica. George didn't just beat him, he destroyed him. In 2 rounds he knocked Frazier down 6 times, claiming the title with power nobody could match. Fans called him a monster in the ring, a man who scared opponents before the bell even rang. But that power met its match in 1974, in a fight that would change his life. October 30, 1974, Kinshasa, Sadr, the Rumble in the Jungle. George, now 25, took on Muhammad Ali, the slick-talking legend. George was the favorite, young, strong, unbeatable, but Ali had a plan. He let George tire himself out, punching the ropes while Ali dodged and danced. In the 8th round, Ali struck back, knocking George down. For the first time, the champ fell. That loss broke something in him, not his body, but his spirit. It was a turning point he'd never forget. 3 years later, in 1977, George fought Jimmy Young in Puerto Rico. It was a hot, brutal match. George lost again, and in the dressing room after, he collapsed. He later said he felt death close, and then a voice, a vision, a call from God. That night, George Foreman walked away from boxing. He became a preacher, trading punches for prayers. In Houston, he built a church and spent the next decade serving his community, helping kids and finding peace. The ring was behind him. Or so he thought. In 1987, at 38, George shocked the world. He stepped back into boxing. People laughed. He's too old, too slow, they said. But George didn't listen. He'd put on weight, his hair was thinning, but his power, still there. He fought for 7 years, winning fans with his grit and his grin. Then in 1994, at 45, he faced Michael Moorer for the heavyweight title. Down on points, George threw a right hand in the 10th round that dropped Moorer flat. The crowd roared. George Foreman, at 45, was champ again, the oldest ever. It was a comeback nobody saw coming. But George's biggest win wasn't in the ring, it was in your kitchen. In the 1990s he teamed up with a company to sell the George Foreman Lean Mean Fat Reducing Grilling Machine. With his charm and that big laugh, he made it a hit. Over 100 million grills sold worldwide, earning him more money than all his fights combined. It wasn't just a product, it was George showing the world how to start over, how to turn a name into something new. Family was George's heart. He had 12 children, 5 sons all named George. A funny choice, he said, kept them close to him. His daughters, some named Georgetta, filled his life with love. He married 5 times, finding joy in each chapter. In Houston, he built a youth center, giving kids a safe place to grow, just like he'd needed as a teen. George gave back, because he knew what it meant to be lost and found. As he aged, George stayed young at heart. He wrote books about his life, went on TV shows and shared stories of Ali, faith and grills. His laugh was contagious, his spirit unbreakable. He'd sit with fans, preach on Sundays, and never stop being George, humble, real, and kind. George Foreman passed away at 76 in Houston, surrounded by his family. The details of his passing are private, as he'd want it. What's not private is the life he lived, a fighter who fell and rose, a preacher who healed, a man who built a legacy of hope. He left us with more than memories, he left us with lessons. Now the world mourns. Boxers like Mike Tyson call him a brother. Ali's family says he was a gentleman. Fans light up social media with grill jokes and thank yous. George wasn't just a name, he was a feeling, a friend we all knew. his youth center kids, his church, his millions of grill owners, they all say the same thing: George made life better. George Foreman's fight is over at 76, but his goodbye isn't the end. It's a champ's victory lap, a life that showed us how to stand up, swing hard, and smile through it all. Rest in peace, Big George. You'll always be our champion.